The ballroom shimmered like a dream carved out of golden glass. Chandeliers dripped with crystal light, their brilliance reflecting off polished marble floors. Everywhere, wealthy men and elegant women moved like they owned the air itself, their laughter tinkling like silver bells, their perfume heavy in the air. For someone like Eliza, who had grown up in a neighborhood where cracked pavements and dim streetlights were the norm, this place felt like another planet. She wasn't meant to be here, not as a guest, not even as a shadow. She had only come because her cousin begged her to help with serving water and clearing dishes for the event staff that evening. Her dress was not a gown but a simple, faded thing she wore to avoid standing out too much. Still, among glittering sequins and velvet tuxedos, she was painfully visible. Each step she took, balancing a tray of glasses, felt like an intrusion into a world that didn't want her. She clung to the instructions given by her cousin: take this to the side table, leave it, and don't speak to anyone. But nerves made her clumsy. The sea of tables stretched endlessly, their decorations too elaborate to tell one apart from the other. Trying to avoid bumping into someone, Eliza slipped toward the nearest table tucked in the corner. Exhaustion made her legs heavy, and her heart hammered from the weight of so many judgmental eyes around her. Without thinking, she placed the tray down and sank into a chair for a moment of relief. It took her only a few seconds to realize something was terribly wrong. The table was silent, unlike the others filled with chatter. When she glanced up, she found herself surrounded not by waitstaff, but by men in sharp suits and women whose jewels sparkled brighter than the chandeliers. They were staring at her, their faces a mixture of confusion, offense, and amusement. "Who is she?" a woman whispered, her lips curling in disdain. "She doesn't belong here," another murmured, loud enough to sting. Eliza's stomach twisted. Heat rushed to her cheeks as she shot up from her seat, nearly knocking over the glass in front of her. Words tangled in her throat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean." Laughter bubbled at the edges of the table. One man smirked. Did she think this was open seating? How quaint. She wanted to run, to disappear into the shadows where no one would ever notice her again. But before she could retreat, a voice cut through the noise, deep, steady, and commanding. "Stay." The single word froze her in place. Her eyes darted to the speaker. At the head of the table sat a man in a perfectly tailored black suit, his presence so sharp it silenced the room. His eyes were cold steel, piercing through her fear. Damian Vaylor, the CEO whose name carried weight far beyond this hall. Gasps spread across the table. No one ever dared to sit at his side, let alone be invited. Yet here he was, telling the poor girl who had stumbled into the wrong world, to stay. Eliza's heart pounded. In that instant, her mistake became the beginning of something she could not yet comprehend. The ripple of shock that followed Damian Vaylor's command lingered in the air like smoke. Every pair of eyes at the table turned toward him, their disbelief unspoken but loud. No one argued, no one laughed now. His word was final, unchallengeable. Eliza, however, stood trembling, half risen from her chair. She didn't dare sit back down, but she couldn't bring herself to walk away either. Damian's gaze never wavered from her. He leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming once against the glass stem in front of him. "I said stay," he repeated, his tone calm but leaving no room for protest. Eliza's knees gave way under the weight of his authority. Slowly, awkwardly, she lowered herself back onto the chair, her hands twisted in her lap, her eyes fixed on the linen tablecloth. The mocking whispers that had moments ago circled her had disappeared. Instead, silence pressed down like a suffocating fog. The dinner resumed, but only in fragments. Conversations restarted cautiously, people glancing at her from the corners of their eyes. The servers moved quickly, trying to smooth over the disruption. Eliza kept her head low, wishing she could vanish. Yet every time she risked a glance upward, she found Damian's sharp, unreadable gaze fixed on her. What was he thinking? Why hadn't he dismissed her like she expected? When the event ended, Eliza slipped out quietly, clutching her cousin's borrowed jacket around her shoulders. The night air was cool, a relief against her burning face. She thought that was the end of it, that tomorrow she'd laugh at herself for the mistake and return to her small, ordinary life. But fate had other plans. 2 days later, as she returned from her part-time shift at the cafe, a sleek black car pulled up beside her on the cracked pavement of her neighborhood street. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a sharp-faced man in a suit. Miss Eliza. Her breath caught. Why yes. Mr. Vaylor would like a word with you. Her first instinct was to run, but curiosity rooted her in place. Within the hour, she was led into the towering glass building that housed Vaylor Enterprises. The skyscraper pierced the sky, reflecting sunlight so bright it seemed to burn. Inside, the world felt even more untouchable: polished marble floors, silent elevators, assistants who moved with the precision of machines. At the very top, she was ushered into his office. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, but Damien himself was far more intimidating than the view. He sat behind a vast desk, his suit perfectly pressed, his expression unreadable. "You," he said simply, as if that single word carried 1,000 meanings. Eliza swallowed hard. I didn't mean to sit there. It was a mistake." His lips curved, not quite into a smile but something close. "Exactly. That's why I noticed you." Her confusion deepened. "Noticed me? Why?" Damien rose, walking slowly toward her. His presence filled the room, making her feel small but unable to look away. "Because everyone else at that table spent the night trying to prove they belonged. You didn't. You were ready to run." "I wasn't supposed to be there," she whispered. "That's what makes it interesting," he replied, his eyes glinting with something she couldn't define. Then, as suddenly as he had summoned her, he waved his hand dismissively. "You may go." Eliza stumbled out of the office, her heart racing. His words echoed in her head. That's what makes it interesting. For reasons she couldn't yet understand, the most powerful man in the city had decided not to let her mistake end so easily. Eliza thought the strange encounter with Damien Vaylor would vanish like a dream. Men like him didn't remember girls like her. She told herself it had been a bizarre accident, nothing more. Life would return to its normal rhythm: early mornings at the cafe, long evenings helping her cousin, and the quiet comfort of blending into the background. But life, it seemed, had other intentions. One morning, as she wiped down the chipped wooden counter of the cafe, a man in a sharp gray suit entered. He looked wildly out of place among the steaming coffee pots and scratched menus. Customers fell silent, staring. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. "Eliza Gray?" he asked, his voice crisp. Her rag froze mid-swipe. "Yes." He handed her an envelope embossed with the silver crest of Vaylor Enterprises. "Mr. Vaylor requests your presence. You've been offered a temporary position at the company. You'll start tomorrow." Eliza's jaw nearly dropped. "What? There must be a mistake." "There is no mistake," the man said firmly before leaving as swiftly as he came. All night she tossed and turned, nerves gnawing at her. Why would a billionaire CEO offer her a job? She wasn't qualified. She hadn't even finished college. Yet something in Damien's steel blue eyes replayed in her mind: you were ready to run. That's what makes it interesting. The next morning, she stood at the base of Vaylor Tower, her heart pounding. The glass skyscraper loomed above her like a giant, its reflection swallowing the sky. Inside, the lobby was polished to perfection, employees striding with purpose. She felt like a child stepping into a world of titans. At the top floor, she was led to Damien's office again. He didn't look up when she entered, his pen moving swiftly over a document. Finally, he spoke. "You accepted." I didn't think I had a choice," Eliza stammered. "Good," Damien replied, finally lifting his gaze. His stare was as sharp as ever. "Choices are overrated. You'll be working as my assistant for now." Her knees wobbled. "Assistant? But I don't know anything about." "You'll learn." His tone left no room for argument. From that day, Eliza's life became a whirlwind. She ran errands across the towering office floors, typed reports she barely understood, and fielded phone calls from people who treated her like an intruder. Whispers followed her everywhere: who is she? Why did he hire her? Employees stared with suspicion, resentment simmering in their eyes. One late evening, overwhelmed by mistakes and the sting of whispered ridicule, Eliza broke down in the empty office. Tears spilled as she buried her face in her hands. "You're not allowed to quit." She startled, lifting her head to see Damien standing by the doorway, his presence commanding even in the dim light. Her voice cracked. "I can't do this. I don't belong here." His expression softened just slightly. "You sat at my table. That means you're capable of more than you think." The words struck deep, echoing in her chest. He wasn't offering her kindness. He was challenging her, testing her. shaping her into something stronger. But for what purpose, she couldn't yet imagine. The invitation arrived in a cream-colored envelope, thick and embossed with gold lettering. When Eliza opened it, her hands trembled. It was for a charity gala, the kind only the most powerful people in the city attended. She was certain there had been a mistake until Damien's voice, calm and commanding, explained over the phone, "You'll accompany me. Be ready at 7. The hours that followed were chaos. Eliza owned nothing suitable for such an event. Dresses in her closet were plain, most secondhand. Her cousin scrambled to help, borrowing a gown from a friend. It was simple compared to the dazzling attire she imagined the elite would wear, but on Eliza it shimmered softly, its pale fabric draping her slender frame. She tried to tame her hair, though wisps still escaped no matter how carefully she pinned them. When she saw herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the girl staring back. That evening, a sleek black car arrived, and Damien was waiting inside. His sharp suit fit like it was carved for him, his presence filling the small space instantly. He looked at her once, his eyes scanning her with an unreadable expression. "You'll do," he said simply, though there was the faintest glint of approval in his gaze. The gala was a spectacle. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light. Tables overflowed with roses and champagne. Guests glittered in gowns and jewels, each one seeming to belong to another world entirely. As soon as Eliza stepped out of the car at Damien's side, whispers began. Heads turned. "Who is she?" Someone murmured. "She looks ordinary," another sneered. Every step she took felt like walking through a storm of judgment. Her borrowed gown suddenly felt too simple, her shoes too plain. She wanted to shrink into the marble floor. But then Damien's hand brushed hers, steady, deliberate. "Ignore them," he said quietly, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You belong here as much as anyone." They moved through the hall together, Damien commanding attention effortlessly. Eliza stayed close, her nerves taut. For a while, she managed to endure the stares, until a rival businessman, tall and smug, approached. His words dripped with mockery. "Damien, I see you've brought a guest. How refreshing to see such charity extended outside the gala theme." Laughter rippled from those nearby. Eliza's cheeks flamed, shame burning her throat. She took a step back, ready to escape, but Damien's voice stopped her. "Careful," he said coldly, his gaze like ice. "Insult her again, and you insult me." The room fell silent. The rival froze, caught off guard by Damien's tone. No one dared laugh now. Whispers spread, but this time they carried awe, not scorn. Eliza's breath hitched. In that moment, she realized this wasn't about pity or protection. Damien was drawing a line, claiming her presence in a way no one could question. Her world spun, fear mixing with something far more dangerous, a flicker of belonging. She had never asked for this place by his side, yet with one sentence, Damien had made it hers. For the first time, she wondered if fate had brought her to the wrong table, or the right one all along. Eliza's life had shifted in ways she never could have imagined. What began as a humiliating mistake, sitting at the wrong table, had become the turning point of her existence. Weeks passed since the gala, yet she still replayed the moment Damien stood up for her in front of the entire hall. His words had silenced an entire room of people who lived to judge. More importantly, they silenced the voice inside her that had always whispered she didn't belong. But that didn't mean her doubts were gone. Each day at Valor Enterprises, she worked tirelessly, proving herself through trial and error. She still made mistakes, still felt the weight of whispers from employees who thought she was nothing more than the CEO's passing interest. Yet something within her was changing. She was learning to hold her head higher, to meet their stares without shrinking. One night, after staying late to finish a report, she found herself standing on the balcony of Damien's office. The city stretched out below, lights glittering like scattered stars. The air was cool, brushing against her face, carrying with it both peace and questions. Why her? Why had Damien chosen her of all people? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She turned to see him approaching, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loosened. For once, he didn't look like the untouchable CEO. He looked like a man. "You're still here," he said quietly. "I wanted to finish the report," she replied. Then, after a pause, she added the question that had weighed on her since that night in the ballroom. "Why did you tell me to stay that day? You could have sent me away, ignored me, humiliated me like everyone else wanted. Why didn't you? Damien's gaze held hers, unflinching. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. Because everyone else spends their lives trying to impress me. They wear masks, perform, pretend. You didn't. You weren't desperate to sit at my table. You were ready to run from it. Her breath caught. Because I didn't belong there. He shook his head. No. Because you were. Real. And in a world full of liars and pretenders, real is rare. The words struck her deeper than she expected. No one had ever seen her that way before. Not as a mistake, not as a burden, but as something genuine. Her chest tightened with emotions she couldn't name. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of the city below. Damien's eyes softened, losing their usual steel edge. You've changed since that night. You're stronger. You're learning to fight back. Eliza swallowed hard. I only managed because you pushed me. His lips curved slightly, almost a smile. No, Eliza. Because you chose to stay. Her heart pounded at the truth in his words. She had wanted to run 100 times, yet here she was, still standing. Not the poor girl who stumbled into the wrong table, but a woman who had found the strength to face the world, even if it terrified her. And in that moment, she realized, what began as an accident was never a mistake. It was destiny knocking at her door.